One of the biggest things that's happening right now is Iran are boogalooing. Not majorly. I don't think it's going to bring about any change or anything like that because Iran have got their country locked down pretty fucking well. But it certainly does glow a little. It does. However, they have nothing to lose. Why young Iranians are rising up once again. Amid growing repression, a sickly economy, and bleak prospects, the death of one young woman was all it took. To be honest, the death of one person is what started the Syrian civil war. I believe it was riot police shot one guy in a crowd and fucking off it went. The 22-year-old woman emerged from the Tehran subway, her dark hair covered with a black headscarf and the lines of her body obscured by loose clothing. When the capital city's guidance patrol spotted her, they were members of Iran's notorious morality police, enforcers of the conservative Islamic dress and behaviour rules that have governed daily life for Iranians since the 1979 revolution, and newly energised under a hardline president who took office last year. By their standards, Masa Amini was improperly dressed, which could mean something as simple as a wisp of hair protruding from her headscarf. They put her in a van and drove her away to a detention centre where she was to undergo re-education. 3 days later, on September the 16th, she was dead. Now, over 8 days of rage, exhilaration and street battles, the most significant outpouring of anger with the ruling system in more than a decade, her name is everywhere. Iranian protesters in dozens of cities have chanted women, life and freedom and death to the dictator, rejecting the Iranian Republic's theocratic rule by targeting one of its most fundamental and divisive symbols, the ailing supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. In several of the videos of the uprising that have torn across social media, women rip off their headscarves and burn them in street bonfires, including in deeply religious cities such as Qom and Mashhad. Come Mashhad. In one, a young woman atop a utility cabinet cuts off her hair in front of a crowd of roaring demonstrators, and another young woman dared to dance bareheaded in front of the riot police. Death to the dictator, protesters at Tehran University chanted on Saturday. Death to the headscarf until when we must tolerate such humiliation. Previous protests over fraudulent elections in 2009, economic mismanagement in 2017, and fuel price hikes in 2019 have been ruthlessly suppressed by Iran's security forces, and this time they may be no different. Yet, for the first time since the founding of the Iranian Republic, the current uprising has united rich Iranians descending from high-rise apartments in northern Tehran with struggling bazaar vendors in its working-class south, and Kurds and Turks and other ethnic minorities with members of the Fars majority. So basically, it is a boogaloo like the previous ones have had, but this one is a bit more. Instead of just one group, it's too many groups, to be honest. The sheer diversity of the protesters reflects the breadth of Iranians' grievances, analysts say, from a sickly economy and in-your-face corruption to political repression and social restrictions. Frustrations Iran's government has repeatedly tried and failed to quash. The anger isn't over just Massa's death, but that she should have never been arrested in the first place, said Shadi Sadir, a prominent human rights lawyer who has campaigned for Iranian women's rights for 2 decades. Because they have nothing to lose, she added. They are standing up and saying, enough of this, I am willing to die to have a life worth living, which is noble, let's be real. However, I'll save it for the end. Information about the protest remains partial at best. Internet access continues to be disrupted or fully blocked. They've shut down the internet a few times, especially on widely used messaging apps such as WhatsApp and Instagram, making it difficult for Iranians to communicate with one another or to share updates on the unrest with the outside world. But witnesses say the demonstrations, which spread to at least 80 cities on Saturday, are the most forceful, vitriolic and emboldened they can remember, far more intense than the previous tremors of unrest. Desperate to damage the powers that be before the inevitable crackdown, videos circulating on social media and shared with the New York Times show protesters have set fire to security vehicles and assaulting members of Iran's widely feared paramilitary forces, in some cases killing them. Oh, okay, then it's turning into a proper boog. It's turning into a proper boog, all they need to do is get their hands on some fucking firearms and we can have ourselves a fucking picnic. Pardon me, the information that is leaked out after many hours' delay also suggests an escalating crackdown. The authorities have moved to crush the demonstrations with violence, including live fire and tear gas. Yeah, there are videos floating around online, I've seen some on Twitter, of the police catching protesters and just on the spot, which that's just going to throw petrol on the fire, including live fire and tear gas. Dozens of people have died. The Committee to Protect Journalists said on Saturday that at least 17 journalists have been detained, as governments tend to do during times like this, including one of the first to report on Miss Amini's hospitalisation, and arrests of activists are also mounting. With Iran's economy at a nadir, I don't know what that means, and Ayatollah Khamenei in ill health, the government is likely to dig in rather than show any signs of weakness, analysts said. But violence will only buy time, they say, not long-term peace. The regime's top leaders have always said, we are not going to make concessions, because if we make one small concession, we'll have to make bigger concessions, said Mohammed Ali Kadivar, an Iranian-born sociologist at Boston College who studies protest movements in Iran and elsewhere. Maybe they'll push people off the street, but because people want change, repression is not going to stop this, even with a crackdown. Then they would just go home for a while and come back. Yeah, with things like this, you cannot get rid of until the actual change happens. I mean, look at the fucking Ra. You know, they didn't go away until they got what they wanted. Until they mostly got what they wanted. Avenues for pushback have dwindled in recent years, leaving Iranians with only protest as a means of demanding change. Just how much their political freedoms had shrunk became clear. Sorry, I choked on some juice earlier and I haven't got rid of it yet. I've still got some Fanta in my lungs. Just how much their political freedoms had shrunk became clear last year when the country's leadership disqualified virtually all candidates except the Supreme Leader's preferred one, the ultra-conservative Ibrahim Raisi, from the presidential election. What a very fair country. In the process, they degraded what had once been a forum for Iranians to debate political issues and choose their representatives, even if the candidates were always pre-selected from within the governing apparatus. Mr. Raisi opposed returning to the 2015 nuclear deal with the United States that had put limits on Iranian nuclear development in exchange for lifting sanctions and economic openness. His election, combined with the worsening economy, left Iranians who craved better opportunities, more social freedoms and closer ties with the rest of the world in despair. The reason the younger generation is taking this kind of risk is because they feel they have nothing to lose. They have no hope for the future, said Ali Vaez, Iran director for the International Crisis Group, noting that the protests were now a regular feature in Iran. By continually blocking reforms, the country's leadership has created a situation where people no longer believe that the system is reformable. I know what you mean. He added, I think people would be willing to tolerate a milder version of the Islamic Republic, but they've just entrenched their position and have created this situation. It's turned Iran into a tinderbox, which is part of the problem when you try to force people to live the way that you want them to live. You know, under libertarianism, everybody gets to live the way that they want, provided they don't fuck up other people's private property and self. Right? That's why, you know, it's the ultimate conflict avoidance strategy, whereas if you've got a state, the state is going to go, no, this is the way you will live your life by our laws and our speech laws and blah, 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 and then you get this. Basically, whenever a government becomes, you know, too fucking powerful and too authoritarian, this is the inevitable end result. And one thing that I've noticed that is a little bit of a white pill for me is, even if they fucking send in the tanks, even if they open fire on the fucking protesters and all that other stuff, that does only stave it off for so long. Eventually, you know, a match hits the fucking powder keg and it all goes off. The headscarf, known as the hijab, is an especially inflammatory issue. The law requiring women to wear loose robes and cover their hair in public has been a pillar of the ruling theocracy and a lightning rod for reform-minded Iranians for decades, drawing one of the first protests against the Ayatollahs after the 1979 revolution from women who did not want to be forced to cover up. During the tenure of Mr. Raisi's predecessor, the reformist Hassan Rouhani, the morality police had been discouraged from enforcing Iran's often draconian laws against women, particularly the requirement that they wear the hijab in public in the proper fashion, entirely covering their hair. That led to young women showing even more hair, even in devoutly conservative areas such as conservative cum. Unmarried men and women were allowed to mingle in public in some places, while contemporary Western music thumped in Western-style cafes in upscale northern Tehran. But the country's conservative leadership saw the slippage in standards as a threat to the Republic's theocratic foundations. Mr. Raisi called in July called in July for the conservative dress laws to be implemented in full, saying that the enemies of Iran and Islam were targeting the religious foundations and values of the society, the official news agency IRNA reported. Over the summer, Iran's morality police, which patrols public areas for infringements of Islamic rules, stepped up enforcement of hijab standards, and 3 coffee shops in central Qom. Is it Qom? Qom. Qom, were closed down for having bareheaded customers. In a video that was widely shared on Iranian social media in July, a mother threw herself in front of a van, taking away her daughter for violating hijab rules, and screamed, "My daughter is sick, I beg you not to take her." The backlash to Miss Amini's death has been so strong that religiously conservative Iranians have spoken up alongside the liberal ones. On social media, women who wear the hijab by choice have started solidarity campaigns questioning the harsh enforcement of the laws, and well, it's not really their choice, is it? And a prominent religious leader has said that the morality police were only driving young women away from the religion. Even tightly controlled state media outlets have acknowledged the issue, broadcasting at least 3 debates that feature reformist voices, a rarity. So there's a little bit of a change happening, but still, we don't know. The authorities have denied using violence on Miss Amini. They claim that she suffered from an underlying health condition, we've heard that a few times before, which her family has disputed, and that she had a heart attack in custody. But to many Iranians, photos of her lying in a hospital bed, her face bloodied, told a different story. Yeah. While Mr. Raisi has promised an investigation and a small nod to the fury, Iran's response to the protests has been given no quarter. It is the same as in previous uprisings: bullets, tear gas, arrests, and blood. In 2009, millions of urban educated Iranians flooded the streets of cities across the country, furious at what they believed was election rigging by their leaders to guarantee a hardline president and thwart reforms. The elite Revolutionary Guards and the Basij paramilitary forces opened fire, killing dozens and arresting far more, and eventually the Green Movement was stamped out. As 2017 turned to 2018, protesters in dozens of cities demonstrated against high inflation and a weak economy. Again, they were met with force. In 2019, the government abruptly hiked gasoline prices, sparking week-long protests by Iranians fed up with ever-thinning wallets, corruption and repression. The authorities killed at least 300 in the crackdown that followed, according to Amnesty International, and slowed the protest momentum by blocking or disrupting the internet. The internet outages have now returned. To help Iranians access the internet, the Biden administration, wow, America's helping this, so strange, on Friday authorized technology companies to offer secure platforms and services inside Iran without risk of violating United States sanctions that normally prevent doing business with Iran. It also greenlit the export of private satellite internet equipment, such as the Starlink service offered by Elon Musk's SpaceX to Iran. But Iranians may face odds that are too great. At some stage, I think it will become impossible for them to control these movements, Mr. Vaez said of the governing authorities, but as of now, the system is bound to bring down its iron fist and try to nip this movement in the bud. Now, which is what governments like this will do. Now, eventually, Iran is at the stage where they don't hide it anymore. Like, most of our governments right now, they're trying their best to, like, hide it. They still try and keep up the illusion that your vote means something, that whenever a new government or party gets voted in, that there will be some kind of meaningful change. Like, the West has still managed to do, like, a really good job of keeping up that charade, right? However, eventually the government will reach a point where it feels safe and content in its own power, and it will just be mask off. Here is what we are. We are authoritarian, fascist, uber fucking dickheads, right? That's just the way it is. Iran is at that stage where, yeah, they'll just turn up in the street and gun you the fuck down if you protest, right? They get to do what our governments wish they could do, right? But our governments, fortunately, are still trying to keep up the charade. But the problem with it is whenever you do that, whenever you kill a bunch of people, these people have fucking families, these people have fucking friends. That is going to cause people to ferment. That's going to cause people to get angry, and that is going to dwell for years and years and years, and then that hatred is going to get passed to the next generation. We saw it fucking happen in Ireland, right? We saw it happen in fucking Ireland, and it happens in places like Iran as well, right? Eventually, it gets to the point where if you work in government and literally everyone hates you and wants to kill you, I mean, it doesn't matter if you've got the police and the army and all that fucking stuff. You're outnumbered. you are out fucking numbered, right? You are in deep, deep trouble. All it's going to take, see if a consignment of some weapons and explosives get into Iran, woof, oh, it's going to fucking kick off. And the government, I feel, is not going to last very long. And there's definitely going to be some people getting dragged outside, taken to the nearest lamppost and given the Hoppian treatment. Right, so as far as Iran goes now, for Iran to topple their government, absolutely yes, I fucking hope they do, and I wish them the best of luck, right? Absolutely hope they fucking do, because I'll admit, even though we make our jokes and everything like that, women should be allowed to wear what they want, and no, women should not be beaten to death for not wearing the right clothes. I'm amazed that I need to fucking say that shit out loud, but that's just the way it is in Iran. But this does glow. I'm sorry, it glows. It's just like, I mean, of course, like, I mean, maybe this did just happen naturally, right? However, whenever something like this happens in a country that I know America has a problem with or has an interest in, I'm gonna say that there might be some three-letter agencies that are kind of fanning the flames a little bit, and if these people do somehow manage to get a hold of weapons and kick off the Boogaloo good and proper, I mean, it's I think we can all safely assume who they got them from.